morning, dear readers. It's Lori here, Books, Ink, and Paper. Welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're here, and I'm excited to share with you an inspiration that I had this morning as I was doing my morning pages. I typically will have an idea of what I'm going to film for the whole month before the month begins, and then I follow that plan, and then sometimes things come up along the way that I will film as well. Today, while I was journaling my morning pages, I happened to look at the bookshelf and the nonfiction section of my bookshelf organization and saw a couple of books that I still haven't gotten to. And I was really struck by how long some of them have been on my shelves. And I thought, you know what? It's time to create a TBR stack to get focused on this. Don't wait for Nonfiction November. Just really take a look at sprinkling some of these into your TBR as you're going along on your regular reading month. So I created a stack really quickly of 6, not 5, not 8, not 10, 6 books I want to add to my TBR between now and probably November. If I could finish all of them before the month of November, then I could add some additional nonfiction titles to the list in November. If I don't get them done, then I'll add them to Nonfiction November as well. But I would like to get a couple of these completed before the end of the summer. So here they are in somewhat of an order, and a little bit more about them and how I acquired them. Sound good? Let's get started. So the first one is The Chicago Cubs, A Story of a Curse by Rich Cohen. I was gifted this book by my friend Heidi, who is also a Cubs fan, as I am. And she actually saw the author speak, and he inscribed it for me, which is so nice of her to do that. And she sent it to me. So it says, "To Lori and Missing Wrigley Field, Rich Cohen." I am a Cubs fan, true and true, will always be, born and raised in the Chicagoland area, and always a Cubs fan. Now, and Heidi and I were together actually when they made it through the playoffs. We were at a scrapbooking crop in Dallas when that happened, and so we have a special connection to that day always as well, and we communicate a lot about the Cubs and watch baseball all year long. I'm an avid baseball watcher, but the Cubs are definitely my favorite. So this is definitely a historical review of the history of the club, of the history of the curse, which if you don't know what that is, it involves a goat. You can look it up. And their struggles to really kind of get in the mindset that they could be a winning team, despite the fact that there might be a curse, which most of us just feel like is an added challenge to some of the other things that have happened along the history of the club. But they've got some great players. This is going to be a great story, and I can't wait to take a look. And I'm going to read this during the summer because at least before October, because October is usually when the series begins, and I like to read it while I'm enjoying baseball when I am able to do that. This one is also about baseball. Wait Till Next Year by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Doris is a writer of historical nonfiction. She's written Team of Rivals, which is a book about Abraham Lincoln. She's written several other really detailed, well-researched pieces of work, some of them much bigger. I have Team of Rivals. I can tell you it is huge, but this one is definitely shorter, smaller, easier to consume. And it's about her growing up and her love of baseball that was instilled in her by her father, which is how I became a baseball fan as well. And their connection to New York and growing up, and the relationship with neighborhoods around the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets or the Giants and other, just kinds of, I'm sure, information about growing up in that era in New York. But I love to learn about people's history with baseball, as well as, small town history outside of a big city. So I think this will really appeal to me. I think it's not just about her dad, but definitely that connection between her and her dad, which is special to me too. Another book I'd love to read this summer if I can is The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. I have a couple of Eric Larson's books on my shelf, I think 4 of them, and I haven't gotten to any of them. But this one was also set in Chicago, so that's fun. And it's set during the World's Fair of 1893, which was held in Chicago, and they created a white city. The design of the World's Fair was very prominent. It also features a character who was a real life character, obviously, it's nonfiction, H.H. Holmes, who was a serial killer who lured people to the World's Fair and then killed them. There's a lot of information about H.H. Holmes since this book came out. Eric Larson's books are also very well researched. They say that they read more like a novel than a nonfiction piece. We'll see. I've heard some people say they're hard to get through for them, so I'm gonna, see how I feel about it, and I'll let you know when I'm finished. There's an adaptation to film for this coming out soon. It was also a National Book Award finalist, and the adaptation I don't know when that's going to be released, but I've already heard who stars as H.H. Holmes. I won't spoil that for you, but if you want to look it up, you certainly can do that on IMDb. So this will be my first Eric Larson, and hopefully will not be my last. Cork Dork by Bianca Bosker was gifted to me by Sarah Swan from Sarah's Nightstand. She was given a copy to read and review a while ago and then gave it away in a contest, and I won. And I'm thrilled to say that I won, but I've had it for a while, so I'm not happy to say I haven't taken a look at it. I started it a while ago and didn't get very far, as you can see, and put it down in favor of reading something else. It follows a woman, Bianca, she's actually a journalist, I think, and journalist and amateur drinker, she says, who just got fascinated with the world of wine after doing a piece on a sommelier, I think, and then was just really sort of obsessed with uncovering how that happens and how people become, students and folks who want to embark on that career. And she learned a lot about wine. It fascinates me too. There's actually a documentary, it was on Netflix, I'm not sure if it still is, called Somm, about the learning and testing and demonstration exams that go with becoming a sommelier. I actually have one in my community who's on the level 2 of those. I think there's 3 levels. She's a level 2, and she said that that's as high as she ever needs to go. But I've had a wonderful dinner and wine pairing, 8-course dinner and wine pairing at her restaurant, and it was amazing. And you don't have to necessarily drink really expensive wines in order to understand how they pair with other things and where they came from and what makes them a Pinot Noir rather than a Pinot Grigio. And there's just a lot that I'm fascinated with, and I feel like I'm going to learn a lot more and enjoy this story very much. So I don't know when I'll get to it, but it's a pretty nice size, but not terribly long piece of nonfiction. So happy to finally be getting to that, Sarah. I do have a Band-Aid on today. It's Jasmine from Aladdin. I've torn my nail really far down, and it's in danger of really breaking too far down, so I am trying to protect it. I went to a local bookstore and a book signing by James Meredith of his book, A Mission from God, a memoir and challenge for America. If you don't know who James Meredith is, I encourage you to look him up, but essentially he's the first Black man that entered the University of Mississippi. He was escorted into the university by federal guards, and I'm sure that there is a lot of information out there about his experience, but because this is a memoir, I did want to take a look at it. This is a photo of him on his first day of class at the University of Mississippi during the 60s, in a time that was a time of racial unrest, especially in the South, especially in Mississippi, Alabama. Just a really difficult time to read about, and I have heard him speak before. and talk about that experience, and I've heard others speak about that experience as well, both their personal experience as well as the history of it. This book also does talk about our relationship in America with education and disadvantaged students, and that's prevalent in my mind because I do live in the South now. Even though I was born and raised in the Chicago area, I do live here, and I am mindful of access to a lot of things that there are barriers around access with kids who really have a lot of barriers to learning and to um, staying in school, staying in the same schools. There's just a lot going on. So what he says, this challenge to America is, I challenge every American citizen to commit right now to help children in the public schools in their community, especially in those schools with disadvantaged students. He goes on to say, I'm convinced in my heart and soul that those 25 words, that one sentence, if acted upon by you and me and our fellow citizens, will create a revolution of love in our country that will transform our nation, uplift our children, and help America lead the world. I have to say I agree, and so I want to do my part and be more aware and understand more and hear James Meredith's voice, because it's important for us right now. The next one is The Road to Camelot by Thomas Oliphant and Curtis Wilkie. There's a glare, sorry. Ironically, I acquired this one at Square Books, which is in Oxford, Mississippi, the home of the University of Mississippi. I did not acquire this at the same time as I acquired the James Meredith, but this one is also signed by the authors. Oh, I didn't even say, this one is inscribed to me and to my partner, Lisa, so that's lovely too. So 1, 2, 3 of the books in my stack are signed by the author and 2 are inscribed. So this one is, this was a signed first edition copy at Square Books. It was recommended by the staff. It was on their stack of staff picks. And I am also fascinated by John F. Kennedy. I have long been fascinated with him. I was just 2 when he was assassinated. And I have just always been, I have memories of that time, even though I was just 2. It was a very traumatic time in our nation's history. I have very vivid memories of my days during that assassination and funeral and what followed. So actually, Heidi and I have a connection. My friend Heidi, who gave me the Chicago Cubs book, we actually, when we were at that scrapbook crop, also got to see the 7th floor museum and Dealey Plaza, and stood on the grassy knoll, and it was just incredible. And our other friend Angie was there as well. But this is really not about the assassination at all. It's about his rise, his campaign, and his rise to the presidency, and how that campaign was supported and influenced, and what challenges happened. So it's really inside that campaign, which is fascinating to me now more than ever, because we're really looking at some things about the current administration's campaign, and the Mueller report has recently been released, and there's just a lot of information about what was done, what wasn't done, what could have been done differently. There's a lot of reference to other presidential campaigns and the way other presidents were supported in their rise to the presidency. So I thought I would take a look at this one because I already had it. And then I may take a look at some other nonfiction pieces about this kind of topic too. But this is definitely a behind the scenes, and they, again, very well researched, and it came highly recommended by the staff at Square Books, and they're usually pretty spot on with their recommendations. So that is my 6th book in the stack. So a little bit of civil rights. These 2 are really correlated in terms of their connection to that time in history, around the same basic time in history. This one is correlated to Chicago, as is this one, so that's fun. And then this one is correlated to wine, and this one is correlated to baseball, as is that other one. So there's some themes running around, but that wasn't necessarily intentional. When I went through the shelf and quickly just picked out what I thought really was clicking for me to want to read, these were the 6 books that popped to the top. So that is why they were all chosen. And then when I was doing this video and preparing for it, I realized that there was a connection between all of them. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and if you've read other books by some of these authors, especially if you've read anything else by Eric Larson. I'd be curious to know. I have Dead Wake, Thunderstruck, and In the Garden of the Beast that are also on my shelves. So I have 4 of his all together, and I'm not sure which one I want to take a look at next. So we'll see what happens after I finish these. I may sprinkle 1 or 2 in this month in my reading in May. We'll see. A lot of we'll sees for me today. I'm really trying to mood read in the month of May, and not trying to do any readathons, just trying to read what strikes me next. And so that's probably why I felt inspired to take a look at this stack. Like, comment, and share if you would. And if you're a nonfiction reader, let me know what's top on your list or what you're about to read as well. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope, as always, that you have a very, very happy reading day. Bye-bye.